something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, and as always, I'm thrilled to be here today. Each day I come either with some lesson that I've just learned this last week, and I'm like, want to share it with you, or I come with some exciting guest who has some insight into life and living and really being the people that we know we can be. That's one thing I know about each of us. We usually dream more than we currently are. And it's always, there's something out there. Now I am a total believer in being content with today, because that is where the gratitude happens. But I'm also a believer in seeing the summits that are out there. And to that end, today, I want to invite one of my dear friends and incredible businesswoman, Cydni Tetro. Welcome, Cydni.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here. You actually just mentioned those summits. And I remember like a year ago, I was in Tanzania at Kilimanjaro. And like every time I go a place, like you come to mind as someone who, like, seriously, just embraced the summits, right? The climb, the entire
So what
journey.
were you in Tanzania for, if not to climb Kili?
So I have a good friend and she runs an orphanage over in Tanzania. And she's been doing it for 20 years. And she wanted, and so we had an opportunity to actually go over and work with her current cohort. So then she started a program for young women in order to get them out of poverty. And so it's a skills when they come out, basically when they hit high school, so that they have other options. So we got to go work with these young women for like 5 days in Moshi and just spend like the entire time with them. We lived in one of the villages and we just worked with these young women. It was life-changing.
And that kind of experience is living actually with people in that kind of a third world country. It changes our entire perspective on our own life and the globe, how we are all a global community. And we sometimes in this little burg that we live here, especially in Utah, we lose sight of the global aspect of who we are. Yeah.
I really do. And you've done a great job of like bringing that together.
I love that. I love to travel. If I've learned anything, and I know you've traveled too, and you will agree with this, that what I have learned is that we are way more alike than we are different. And the things that truly make us happy and bring joy are accessible to all. Now I see so many people and they're universal, so joyous and so happy and laughing and loving life, not because of what they own, not because of how many boats they have or houses, just because they have family relationships, just because they're connected to a community. And I love that piece. All right, so we're going to talk about some of your summits today. Okay, let's refresh them on how you and I met each other. So this was not very many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, when Cydni was like just becoming the woo-woo in Utah. And she came up to me and she said, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And she said, "You catered my wedding." I was like, "Cydni Rogers? Are you kidding?" So that was, how long have you been married?
It was like 25 years ago.
Okay. So a long time. And obviously, in my career, I probably catered maybe personally, and not my event planners, but me personally planned and executed a little over 5,000 weddings. And so I don't remember all of them, but I remember yours. And this is, of course, what I remember. First, your mom is a delight to work with. She's wonderful. And I didn't work quite as much with you. But the day of your wedding, it rained. And this was an outdoor wedding in your backyard. And
Totally.
We had not really made a lot of contingency plans because, hello, we live in Utah, the second driest state in the nation. And here's this rain pour. Now, when I have worked with brides before, and this is what's happening, and all of their decorations, their tables, their linens, and they just kind of lose it. Can I just say they lose it? You didn't. You were like, it's no problem. We'll do this. I'll stand over there. We'll put a little thing up there. They'll come in, they'll go in here, and we'll be fine. And you were on. And that skill set from your early 20s, okay, is exactly the skill set that you have used to launch your career, to dream your dreams, that do it attitude. Nothing is impossible. Hey, if I have a smile on my face, well, that helps. You saw the possibilities, and the struggle didn't get in your way. Would you say that's true at all?
As you say that, I wouldn't even have anchored myself like that back in my 20s, but I am a big believer that life's going to throw a lot at you. And at the end of the day, it is how you handle it, right? You can't change it, but you can get through it, and you can do it without like it completely destroying you, right? And so much of life is what you decide to do in the moment of the hardest things, and how you treat people and how you elevate. It really is the key for me, 100%. That is, like, I never talk about it very frequently, but it is a very important attribute to me to be able to say, I can just get through these things. There's always a path. We'll always get through, and I can become a better person, and I can be good to all the people around me in those moments of the hardest times.
I love that piece, that you can be good to people in the hardest times. I think I'm guilty of that at times when stress is like, and all of a sudden I'll bark something. Wait a minute. What I'm going through has nothing to do with how I treat someone else. Yeah. So,
yeah, it takes a lot of work though, right? A lot of reflection to figure out in those moments how, you can do those things. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't change the weather, right? But you're in a moment where you're celebrating something, and that's incredible. And life's going to throw a lot of stuff at us. It's going to throw a lot of stuff at us. And if we can manage through those moments with, grace and empathy, it's going to be a great example for the other people around us also.
And that's exactly what you showed, not only to me, but your family and your guests, everyone that evening. I mean, you had a huge wedding, 400 or 500 people. And every one of them came with a smile on. Every one of them absolutely had the best time. And the rain didn't stop them because it didn't stop you. That gift, Cydni, that we give ourselves is called, and for me, I call it grit or resilience. Of course, it's a very hot button word now. But you were so young then. How do you think you developed that resilience at such a young age?
So I'll tell you a couple stories. Probably the reason I'll never run for political office. When I was in high school, I ran for 4 years straight for student council, and I lost every year. And I remember my parents many times saying, Sid, you have to remember that losing builds character, that it's the toughest things that you're going to go through that build this resiliency or grit, and they ultimately define who you are. And it kind of became this theme for me. In my senior year of high school, I had a couple of significant things that I had to get through. And I just remember this, my parents were so good about just reflecting on the fact that you are going to have lots of hard things in your life, and how you show up and how you power through, it will become the definition of who you are as a person over the course of your life. And so I think because I had a bunch of experiences when I was in high school, it kind of formulated this plan as I was going through college, and then as I got married, where it's like, I can be a great creative problem solver. I'm okay if life throws me lots of things. There's always going to be a path. I won't shut my own doors. I'll leave doors open, and I will focus on building great networks of people. My very first job, when I graduated with my undergrad, there were these with my graduate degree, I ended up in a group in product management at Novell. And there was a gentleman there who I got to work with. And he had one rule, even in working with people. He was like, Sid, every time someone reaches out to me, I respond to them. And it's the combination when you think about grit and then relationships. That's the way we get through, is how do we become a better person? How do we help other people move forward? And how do we just make the world better ultimately in those moments that are the hardest?
I love that. And you have certainly taken that early life lesson and just exploded it into becoming this dynamic, powerful, well-known woman that you are. I'm going to stop right here in this podcast, and I want to backtrack and tell my listeners why they should be listening to you and why you're so fabulous. Okay.
Oh yeah, we jumped right in. We didn't even say
Okay.
anything.
So, in my mind, you are one of the top 5 women in the state who are the movers and shakers of what's happening in our state. And not only are you doing that in business, but more specifically, you have your pulse on what's happening with the women here. You are immersed in our growing tech industry. You are offering opportunities and encouragement and lifestyles for women who want to step into STEM and all sorts of different things. You are the beacon that's out there to say, if you dream it, you can do it. I don't know anybody that's carrying that banner better than you are. And I'm just like honored to call you my friend. I was first your caterer, but now you're my friend. And so how do you see that, Cydni?
It's, first of all, I'm deeply honored that to both be able to sit in that role, but also thank you for seeing that that's what I'm doing. When I started this journey, that wasn't actually my goal, right? And I think that that's what defines, as we see people who make change, right? That the initial goal was how do I make a difference for people? That if I bring a community together, when I started the Women Tech Council, which was really the beginning of that journey, for me it was, wait, I see a way I can make a difference. And if I bring all of these amazing people together and put us in a common direction, we will make an impact for for tens of thousands of women. And what's been the most amazing blessing of that entire thing is that it expanded my learning, my networks, my ability to make a difference for other people, and then the ability for other people to lock arms with me and really do something that creates meaningful change. I mean, women in tech, the reason I think it's so powerful is because we need all of that diverse thinking to solve the world's problems. Innovation is at the core of all of the things that we're trying to solve today. 50% of our population are women, 50% of the workforce are women. And in tech, it's only 23% in the state and only 5% in executive ranks. If we want to change the way we solve problems, if we want to change generational wealth, we have to get more women not only into the industry, but through the entire ecosystem, because that's how we make real demonstrable change for our communities and our families of the future. And so if we're going to create this change that I believe we all want for future generations, it really does take this locking arms and just making a difference in the world. And I really have just had this amazing honor of being one of those leaders that people have been willing to lock arms with and make a difference. And you can feel the difference. One of our programs is the She Tech program, in which we've had 30,000 high school girls go through.
Wow.
And you sit in the midst of thousands of girls and you see their lives changing before your eyes as you work with them. All of a sudden they meet someone who looks like them, they see a different option, they're selecting those options, they're changing what they can become. I mean, that's what we want for people around us. We want them to see their full potential. We want them to have access to opportunity, and we want them to use their talents to make a difference in the world for the rest of their lives. And if we can be but one small part of that, that's what we all hope that we can do, is be one small part of someone's journey on their path to their greatness and doing everything that they want to accomplish.
And that is how we see what we do, Cydni. Even though you and I do different things, we see ourselves as change makers, as constantly every day dropping as many pebbles into the pond as we can and getting the ripples to go out. And I live in an optimistic world where I see blue ocean. And that if we drop enough petals, and we get enough people to start dropping those petals, that finally the ripple effects overlap, and we find ourselves in this blue ocean where everyone is not the same and being very uniquely themselves, but that we have the same vision of what can happen here with mankind and globally, and how we can make lasting change on our planet. As you know, Cydni,
That's
I'm
right.
69 and I haven't given up on us yet. There are times that people say, "Oh my gosh, this is the end." Well, let me tell you, when I was in my teenage years, every adult was saying, "Oh my gosh, we're never going to survive this. The hippies are overtaking the world." Do you know what I mean? And in the end,
Yes.
the hippies became this great baby boomer generation that just transformed the planet in how we do business. Now, I feel there's a time, though, for us to step back from that push to capitalism. And even though I'm definitely a believer in capitalism, but to see how we can use the models that we find ourselves in to bring everyone in. Have you heard of the movie Uncharitable yet?
Yes, I have, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Okay. So I went to the screening of this in Salt Lake. And prior to going, I was just a total believer that I always wanted to see what their administrative costs were. You never wanted to spend more than 20% on that. And I'm sorry, is the leader of this organization, do they have two cars? Seriously, they should just have one, that kind of attitude.
Right.
After seeing this movie, I began to see that what if we took our best minds and the best people that were the best in every industry and put them to working on solving some of these global problems. And what if we spent 40, 50% of what we took in initially on administration to get these people? But then the result that we have is that, wow, maybe we really can solve having clean, safe water worldwide. We have the technology to do this. There's no reason that we're not solving this before I leave this planet, that we're feeding people, that we have the technology to do that, that we're not doing that, that we step into what it takes to heal this planet. And I tell you what, when they asked me, I signed up right away. Do you want to be on the advisory council for this movie? I'm like, yes. And I've been sitting in on these meetings with these global people. I'm just me in Utah. And yet I see the vision.
Yep.
And that's the exact vision that you have, Cydni. It's just you. You're here. You're doing your little things. But you're creating in what's possible for women. You've already changed it here in Utah. You're creating that kind of platform for people globally. Do you see that?
Sometimes it's hard to remember when you're in the midst of the day to day, right, where that's elevating,
Yeah.
but that's exactly my dream, right? Is that we have made worldwide change for everyone because I deeply appreciate how much of a difference it will make. We were talking at the beginning when I was in Africa, we were sitting in these groups with these girls where opportunity was hard to come by for them. And they're now sitting in this classroom, and then you're hearing their stories and you see their talent and you realize how much of a difference that we can make if we spend our effort doing things that help lift other people. And the reason, even, running a business, the reason you run it isn't just because you're looking for, business success. You're doing it because you appreciate that when you build successful businesses, you lift all the people who work for you. You allow them to then do the thing, it gives them these platforms to live in their own communities and change their families and create other opportunities and use their talents. At the end of the day, if every person in the entire world had the ability to use their talents to progress us forward and had access to those opportunities, we would make historical changes in the things that matter in this world because there is talent everywhere. Everyone just doesn't have the same opportunities, and we need the brilliance of all those people to solve big problems.
I think about when I started my business, we're talking 1982 versus when I retired in 2018. The kind of really the standard of that every business was operating on, for the most part, not everyone, but in this fear-based business, kind of the dog eat dog.
Yep.
You came to work because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't. You performed because you were afraid of being passed over. You did your best because you were afraid of failure and you were afraid of this and afraid of that. And we created these shark tanks
Mhm.
of business and economy within business. And to begin to see that starting to shift now, and in business, to actually want to use the words, not just integrity, that one's been around a long time. But what about if we use the word love? What would it look like if you had a love-based business that people came to work because they loved what they did and they loved serving with their group and they loved what they provided on a worldwide basis, and it was all beginning to shift rather than the energy in those companies that have embraced that different culture has just like skyrocketed. And
Yep.
you can see it with those who are still functioning in that fear-based kind of community. How do you see that, for example, in the tech industry at Silicon Slopes? You work there, like, that's where you spend your life.
Yeah. So, two thoughts come to mind. I completely agree. It is not a zero-sum game. Like, we should not live in work environments where someone has to lose for someone to win. And that is one of the
Yeah.
things that I think is really critical for change. I think one of the greatest tests to the evolution of leadership, because I really believe that we are in this evolution of leadership, the one that you described, which was an entirely different ecosystem. We've had this privilege of the last 4 years of having the environments change, where we understood flexibility. We understood that, and we have had way more empathy for the whole person, all the things that they're balancing in their world, and that they're going to be multifaceted. And we've embraced that as organizations. I think right now we face probably one of the single biggest moments in time where it will decide how we will end up
Mm,
managing for the next decade. Because when you're faced with thriving economies, it's
yeah.
easy to change and embrace all of those things. When you're faced in the dynamics of the world today, which is ever changing, there is some big constant change happening every 6 months. There's an economy that we're
Yeah.
uncertain about how our future looks like. That's the test. That's actually the true test of what we've learned over the last few years that we were willing to embrace. Because leadership and the way we used to lead, which is, everyone in the office where we could see them and we could exactly control what was going on, or we felt like we could control. That's the proven method that everyone used to focus on. But we changed it. And now can we sustain the change and make it better in an environment that is more complex? I think it's actually our greatest test, because for women and underrepresented
Yeah.
groups, the changes have been very meaningful. They've allowed for promotion. They have allowed for them, for all of people, me, like a working mom, right, to be able to have everyone see that that flexibility is number one critical factor. Hold me accountable for my job, but give me the flexibility to do it in a way that lets me show up the very best in all aspects of my life. That's the type of people that we want. That's the type of leadership culture that I want. But when faced with economic uncertainty, it is currently getting fully tested, is to if we are willing as leaders to change and lead with empathy and lead with a new lens in something that's less proven, right? We knew the other model. And so us as employees, us as leaders, we're all in this evolution, which I believe we have to fully embrace, because it allows us to really use the talent of all the people that wasn't being used before, but in a way that does what you're talking about. It embraces the changes that we've had as people. It embraces the changes and the evolution that we need as individuals in the workplace. And we can still build great companies with great profit, that do great things in the world, that solve really great problems, that do all the things that we need businesses to
Yeah.
do with a new style of leadership. But I will tell you, I think it takes more work from leaders to think about how they evolve in this
Yeah.
place to still be great leaders in a different structure of companies with different expectations of your employees and people around you.
I recently had an experience with a company out at Silicon Slopes, and a dear friend of mine was going through a lot of emotional trauma and was struggling with several different aspects in her life, and her work was slipping. Now, in the old world, what I would have seen was like, if you can't pull the rope, then let go of it and let somebody else pull, and that you just move on. Instead, what happened to her was that she was brought in and said, "What's happening in your life? What's going on?" Because this, we didn't see this before, and just your persona. And so she was able to share with them, and they were like, "Okay, I know of a program," and they were able to like allow her to step into a program and be gone for a month and not lose her job and come back as a better, more whole person to lift that organization even more rather than just cut her off.
See, that's what we need. Like we need that because it makes our communities better when we do that, right? And whether someone works for you today or they work for you in 10 years, you're part of their journey. And if you're willing to do that as a leader, it makes all the difference in how everything comes together for everyone over the course of their lives.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story. And that's what I think we need to do, right? That's the evolution of leaders. Like that's the people that you want to show up because you recognize this. In my company, I have all these people in different ebbs and flows of life, right? And it takes more work to make sure you're aware that you see something like that you pull someone in, that you're willing to have this empathetic conversation around like, hey, how can we help? And then step into the place of help because you know it will help them as a person. And for me, I totally, completely agree. I mean, you're just bringing to mind like 1,000 stories that I have, even of my team members. I had the same conversation last week where I've got someone who's, a brand new mom, and she's like, Sid, I don't know what my journey looks like coming back. And I'm like, you know what? You're talented. We want you on the team. You tell me what you need, and we'll change it all of the time. Whatever it is that you want to do to step in and that makes sense for you, like we'll match you there. We'll meet you where you need to be. And because you're valuable to our team and we'll take that and we're willing to be that fluid. And there's no instruction book that says that's what you do. That's just what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. It's just when you live with love and that as your motivation, instead of fear, then you're naturally drawn to those kind of places. There probably doesn't a week go by, Sid, on this podcast that I don't talk about my favorite quote from my book. And yeah, isn't that great when you can start quoting yourself? But anyway, my favorite quote is that the healing starts when the hiding stops. And so many people, they say, well, of course I'm hiding. If I show this or that I am suffering from this, I'll lose my job. My family won't want to be around me, that there'll be, all these consequences. I'll lose friends. I won't be liked on social media, crazy stuff like that. And I tell them that if their true desire is to heal, the first step is to stop hiding. Because otherwise you don't give people the opportunity to embrace you. You don't give people the opportunity to say, I struggle like that too.
That's right.
And within our own lives, I hid from myself all the issues that I was struggling with. I thought I was coping with them. I thought I was looking great and successful. Until finally, you're just like, I'm miserable. And where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And so you stop hiding. Okay. And when industry steps into that role and says, this is a safe place, there's no need to hide here, then talk about productivity.
That's right.
That's when it skyrockets.
That's right. Productivity and loyalty and all the things that you need to build companies, they come as a result of being a good person, right? And caring about those people around you. And that we're talking about this, and my mind is going like, okay, how do we make this change happen more rapidly? Because we have enough leadership that hasn't been the way in the past. Yeah. And like, how do we create this transformation, right? We're seeing it happen. And I think the challenge for everyone who sits in leadership and management positions is to think about what you could do better to make this the environment that you're either leading or you're building. Because it is, I actually believe that people are going to demand that that is the way forward. That employees who work for companies,
Yeah.
they are going to be the ones who help us lead this change in how we evolve companies.
Yeah. I know you've heard the phrase, are you swimming in a red ocean or a blue ocean? And what happens in that red ocean where you have the shark eat shark and you dread going to work and they use phrases like, oh, another day, another dollar. Oh, I'm back to hell's half acre and all sorts of things like that, as opposed to be like jumping out of bed and like, I can't wait to go swim with my fellow fish in the blue ocean where like everyone has a purpose and something to do. It's completely transformational in our companies.
That's right.
And I love to see that really the tech industry out there is leading the way.
That's right.
You.
We're all, I think it's one of the coolest industries because we get to learn from each other. I got one of my favorite things about the group of people and the organizations around me are the best practices that I learned, where people are like, oh my gosh, totally tried this. You're like, I didn't even think about that. We should do that. And one of the ways we move forward faster is by that sharing, saying, this was a great program. We tried this. It made a huge difference in that evolution. And I'm a big believer that the faster we learn from each other, which is really the abundance mentality versus trying to, hold everything back or, the red waters, that's the fastest way of change.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. All right, so I'm going to ask you the actually, it used to be the $1,000,000 question. Now it's the $1 billion question. Okay. Inflation has infected the value of the answer.
That's true.
Okay, so this is the one I asked Corinne Clark. Okay. So you are working full-time with a more than full-time career.
Yeah.
You serve on boards. I serve with you and on the IHC board. I served with you on the Tech Council board. And when somebody said, would you be the next chairman of this board? I heard you say, I can't. I just agreed to be chairman of the Intermountain Hospital board. And, and I'm thinking, I just laughed to myself. I'm like, oh yeah. Stepping into life. So, you got all that and you're married and you have a family. Yeah. And you have local extended family. So a lot of things pressing on your time. Yep. How are you creating this? Because this is the number one question I get asked when I speak. Mm-hmm. And so I love to hear what other people have to say about it.
How am I creating all of these things that are going on? I think you have to decide. So for me, it's a decision about priority at the end of the day, where I think my time and my talents will make the biggest difference and what's most important to me. And then I kind of create my structure down from that as they come. There's two things that sit at the very top for me. One has been my family first. And I've actually made all of my decisions based on that first. And then the second is, it's not just about the monetary side that you're going to make. It's really about what's the legacy? What's the place that I'm going to spend my time so that I made a difference for other people? Whether I'm known or not, did I make a difference for other people? It isn't for me about ego. It's not about the reputation. Yeah. It's not about that. It is about I know I've been given time. I know I've been given talents. And those talents were meant to help other people. And am I using them in the most impactful way? And then I've really structured everything from that. I've thought many times in the course of my career that I decided to take specific jobs, not because they were the most lucrative, but because they allowed me to prioritize my family first. I didn't take jobs that would have put me in really senior positions, but would have required me to be on the road 24/7 or wouldn't have given me the flexibility of work environment. Because I've always wanted to have this ability to work from the soccer field or at the drill competition or wherever it was that I needed to show up. I wanted that ability.
With your little laptop.
Totally, exactly. I'm got my hotspot. I've got some headphones. You're going to see me there. But that was so important to me that I did that. And then I just very early, because I saw other people help me, saw that I had this unique role that I could step in and help lead change and bring people together. And I could do it not just in a business context, but in a community context. And so the places that I try to show up are places where I really do believe that I can do that. Now, am I constantly prioritizing, and are my priorities like upside down sometimes, right? And I'm making trade-offs? Yes. But every time I do that, I have to step back. I made decisions for my kids where I'm like, I'm going to try to be home from the office at like 5 o'clock every day, because if I get back online at 10 o'clock, my kids don't notice. But they do notice when I'm not there in the evenings. And so I made these intentional
Yeah.
decisions in the course of my career to say, this is what's important to me. I will sacrifice, and it's fine for me to sacrifice other things in order to do the things that I want to do and to be in the places that I want and to build the life with the people that I want around me.
Yeah. I love that. It is, and it's a constant evolution. You don't just make that decision one time and then everything else is just gone and it's easy. You know,
Nope.
things come up and you are constantly saying to yourself, okay, so how does this fit into my priority list?
Yep.
I was just recently asked to speak at an event in Hawaii and on Oahu. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to do this. And I looked on my calendar and I'm like, my oldest granddaughter, it's her choir concert. And it's the only thing all year she's asked me, Grandma, will you try and come to this? Because I really want you there. I know you love to sing and I want you to see my love of singing. And when I sat there and thought about that, and I thought about what I was going to be paid and the opportunity to be on that stage,
Yep.
and then I just said, I can't. I'm sorry. If you can move me to a different day, I can't. My granddaughter needs me.
Yep.
And to make those decisions, I can tell you this, they get easier instead of harder. Because as you continually make those decisions and put those priorities first, it actually becomes easier. I looked at my calendar, I let out a big sigh, but I knew what I was going to do.
That's right. It's that, and I think you're right. It is you constantly, if you have to commit to the framework of how you're willing to prioritize this, and then it becomes easier. But it's not like you want to do both all of the time. I have this model that I use. It's called core, pour, and more. And so it's this idea that, are you doing this evaluation in your life of like core, pour, and more? Are you spending your time like in the poor category of things that don't return enough value, that take a bunch of your time, that aren't the highest priority things? And should you get rid of them? Because I think you have this constant prioritization in your life where sometimes we get sucked into a bunch of things. And all of a sudden we're like, wait a second, I've got to back off. So I do this evaluation of core, pour, and more in my life. And then this other hat that I've decided to wear is because lots of people ask me to do lots of things. They ask me to sit on lots of boards. I don't know how to, or get involved in some initiatives. I've actually found that it's my number one opportunity to give other people opportunity so that they have doors opened that they didn't have before. And so over the last basically like 2 years, I've been really intentional, like, oh, someone's asking me to come do this, or they need to do this. I'm like, do you know what? I cannot make it, but can I send so-and-so in my place? And what has happened is I have seen their careers and their access to other opportunities completely transform. So I think we also end up in this unique place where things come at us that we can be the door openers and pull the people through and put them at the table and change their futures. But it requires thinking. It's actually much easier just to say no than it is to do the extra work to say, oh, just kidding, I've got someone else. Can I put this person in my spot? And so that's become my current initiative of like, I can't do everything, but when people ask me, I promise I can help other people and I will willingly help everyone else.
I remember when Gail Miller was asked to speak somewhere. And she did that exact same thing. She said, I can't come, but I would recommend Mary Crafts. And when I heard that Gail Miller had recommended me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I don't even know if I would have accepted this without her endorsement. But because I had her endorsement, I had total confidence that I got this. And you step into that place.
Yeah, that's so
and that's
cool.
such a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it, it's my principle of the one more, like tiny things that we can do that are just one more thing, but they make such a difference for the people around us.
In closing, Cydni, can you elaborate on that? I love that mantra. I'm just going to give one more.
Totally. So it kind of came to me. I have a good friend. She's an Olympic medalist. And she was telling me about her training to win her 2 Olympic medals. And she was like, okay, Sid, so here's the deal. When I was getting, or 5 years before I ever won, or probably 10, she's like, I started just doing one more squat. I started doing one more sit up. She's like, it's super painful in the moment, but it was just one more thing. And it's just one, it was like one more sit up. But over the course of time, it made me so much stronger because I did just one more. So then I started thinking about that in context of what we do every day. We have opportunities to do one more thing for someone that takes almost no time off of our plate. It's taking one more person to the networking event. It's giving one more person. You hear about a leadership training, you're like, oh my gosh, one more person. I should suggest into that. One more person if I can't sit in a board. One more person on a stretch project. One more person invited to a boardroom that's never sat there, who just needs to listen and get the exposure. It takes almost no time, just like one sit up. But what it does take is you being super intentional. And when you do it, and when you also become aware of it, like I'm trying to become so much better at that over the last 2 years, you see the transformation for other people. But I am constantly reminding myself, and now it's becoming part of my DNA. Something comes to me, I know I can't do it. Like, do you know what? I'm going to call so-and-so. Or I'll be like, hey, Kristen, do you want to go do this for me? Because I can't go. And all of a sudden, and then afterwards, like I'll talk to someone, like I didn't even appreciate how much of a difference it could make. And I think that's the power of doing one more, is that our plates get full as you get into leadership, but that's because you have more opportunities. And if you give them to more people, it moves them faster, accelerates them faster. And that's what we really want. We want people moving faster than I did in my career, because that's how we're going to make more change. I want them moving up the ranks. I want them having more networks. Change. I want them more opportunity. Yeah. And I feel that I have a really unique opportunity to sit in a role today where I can do that on a very constant basis and make a difference for a lot of people.
Well, Cydni, you definitely make a difference for a lot of people. You made a difference for me. And I don't know if you know that. But that day when it was raining, you had a powerful impact on me. And that has stayed with me. So to my listeners today, that's my challenge to you. Be thinking about, what is your one more? What can you do? Can you give one more? Sometimes we think we're at the end of our ropes, but can you give one more? Just one more, and the difference it will make. I know at the gym, when we talked about your Olympic athlete person, that's what I ask myself every time I'm ready to stop a rep or stop the treadmill or stop whatever it is. Did you leave anything on the table? Oh, I can give one more.
Exactly.
And just push that to the next level. Thank you so much for being here, Cydni. You are a light. Well, let's just say more like a spotlight, for so many people and for me.
Oh, well, and thank you so much. Thank you for all your work to make such a difference for people. And thank you for including me in these conversations. You do such an amazing job of changing the conversation for everyone and showcasing what are just really important conversations for us as a human race to move forward and become better. So thank you.
When I first retired, I had a hard time getting people to shift from thinking about me as the food lady to be thinking about me as the thought leader. But slowly but surely, I keep working that, and I still get people text me in the middle of the night, hey, we're going to be in this town. Where should we eat for dinner?
That could be your running list of restaurants.
But for the most part, I had someone last night in the tech industry reach out to me and need me for something different. And I find myself having time to give one more.
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job at that.
Thanks for being with us on Crafting a Meaningful Life. And every one of these pieces that came out of Cydni's mouth are tools that we can all use to craft the very best version of ourselves. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.